Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Party Talk, where we empower leaders in youth drug prevention. Happy Monday. I hope your week is starting off amazing and you had an incredible weekend full of fun and friends and family. Today, I'm talking with Julie Dreifaldt. And check this out. She is the Community Liaison for One Chance to Grow Up. She's passionately and tirelessly advocating for kids, and she equips parents to talk about today's marijuana. Julie regularly educates policymakers, educators, and trusted adults about the current problems with THC, the troubling potencies, deceptive products, and needed protections for our nation's children. Julie speaks nationally to parents, trusted adults, youth-serving coalition partners, and school organizations about today's marijuana, the impact on kids, and how communities can generate actionable narratives to create change. She has a Bachelor of Arts in History and English from Mount Vernon Nazarene University. And if you stay tuned, we're going to give you all the ways you can connect with her and benefit from the great work that she's doing with her whole team at One Chance to Grow Up. So, Julie, thank you so much for being on the show. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Jake?
I'm so excited that you're here because when we met at Johnny's Ambassadors Conference, I was blown away by your experience with advocacy. And I was like, I couldn't believe that you said yes to being on my podcast.
I'm honored to be here. I think you're doing such an amazing job of getting the message out of how important it is to get as many adults as possible to protect our kids. They need protected, as the name of our nonprofit. They have one chance to grow up. So they got one shot at this. So we got to help them reach their full potential.
Yes, exactly. And what I love about it is your students follow what you do, not what you say. So if you're a great advocate for your student, guess what your student's going to be? A great advocate for themselves, for their friends. So you're setting them up to do impactful work. And like you said, like a parent's job is to protect your kids. So you're teaching us how to do that better. So here's the plan, Julie. You have this incredible presentation for us. If you are listening in the car, here's the thing. You'll want to listen. And then later, if you want to re-watch this episode, go to our YouTube channel because Julie has actually created visuals for us. So she's going to take us through her best practices and the things that are really working and some case studies. And for those of you listening, you're going to be blown away by some tips for advocacy and really talking to your legislators. Anything I missed, Julie? Just kind of set this up about what you're taking us through.
That's perfect. And I will try to explain each slide as best I can so you on the radio are able to, listen to it properly.
Okay, awesome.
I've just dated myself saying radios.
You're right. I use the radio sometimes.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much. I'll jump in if you're good with that. A little bit about me, Julie. I live in Colorado for about 24 years, which has kind of been the epicenter of marijuana legalization. Personally, I'm originally from Ohio, so go Buckeyes. And unfortunately, I'm a Cleveland Browns fan as well. But my husband and I, we have 3 kids. They are 22, 20, and 18. So we know for a fact that education is vital in providing protections for our kids. We have 2 Great Danes and a giant Mastiff, so our life is crazy at my house. But I'm so excited to be talking to you today, Jake, and I'll run through kind of what's worked for One Chance to Grow Up and me personally and professionally, and we'll go from there. So really quickly, marijuana was legalized in Colorado in 2012 via Amendment 64. So Governor Hickenlooper was the governor at the time, and he invited stakeholders, including some of these moms, quote, to a task force to recommend policy on this new legalized market. So as the slide says, that the health, safety, and well-being of children and the public was ranked dead last, and ease of the consumer was ranked number 1. So at that point, we decided that our mandate was set. We had to create a group, an organized nonprofit to really stand in the space to be a voice for kids. So we started out as Smart Colorado, and we changed our name in 2020. because we were getting more and more states legalized. We were getting questions, dozens of questions every week from different states on now that it's legal, how do we regulate this? So we have over 10,000 followers from every single state. We're citizen-led. We're a very small nonprofit. We don't take money from tax revenue, so we're able to say what we want and do what we want. We've affected over 37 pieces of legislation. And I actually just was going through my closet, finding some old stuff from 10 years ago, and the message is still the same. So our message has always been, it's been about kids and the effects of THC on their brains and their bodies and their lives. So that's who we are. This is a slide, and it's a tough slide because this is why we do what we do. There's Levi. He died. He was an exchange student from the Congo in 2014 because he had unmarked edibles and had way too many servings and jumped off of a parking garage. And Ethan Andrew, he had cannabis-induced psychosis. Daniel Ament had the first lung transplant due to vaping injuries from nicotine and THC. Sammy, Brian, and Randy all have passed away after having experienced cannabis-induced psychosis and taking their own lives. And Morgan McCoy, she's a cannabis medical marijuana user herself, and she has educated her daughter on what marijuana looks like and doesn't look like. And in Florida, it's in a black and white package. It's not appealing to kids, but a friend of hers came from California and had Hawaiian tropic gummies, and her little daughter ingested them and had to be in the hospital for several days. And now she's an advocate on making sure that marijuana as medicine looks like medicine and does not look like candy.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty powerful. I stalked her on Facebook, how it was. So, and she reached out to me, and she's been one of our community voices. And she had a quote. She said, "Would you try to sell Clorox in Capri Sun packages?" That's what her analogy was, and I'll never forget her telling me that because that was so powerful. Because that's what some of our candies look like, and it's toxic and dangerous. So,
oh my gosh. Okay, I want to, before you do this part, I just want to highlight something that you said that really struck me, is that the governor's task force, so they brought together this task force, and one of their least priorities was protecting the health and well-being of kids.
And the community, and public health, yes.
And public health. And that feels so backwards. Maybe you'll talk about this later, but how does a task force even, it seems like when that comes up, there should be a red flag and everyone should know about it and say, hey, we need a new task force or something. How does that?
Well, right, because the task force, but you have to remember, this was 12 years ago, so marijuana wasn't anywhere, and it was a whole new industry that they had to try to figure out. There was somebody on the task force that said biodegradable packaging was more important than child-resistant packaging, because I don't think anyone really knew. I shouldn't say that. I think the marijuana industry knew, but I don't think anyone really knew the mass commercialization that was going to come out of this. People were thinking it was a decriminalization, but yes, there's a great book, and I'll share it later, about what task force and what regulators should have, who they should have. They should have doctors involved. Doctors should have been on this task force. I don't think they were. So, great point.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, but because it was a new industry, innovation was the priority, and then the tax structure and how to make it easy for the consumer.
Okay.
And I won't go into a lot of detail on this slide because there's a lot on here. My point is, we've been involved in this for a long time. And what happened in Colorado, and actually even what's happened in Denver on the local level, has really been best practice across the country. So the THC universal symbol, we got that on. We had to fight a whole session because the industry thought it was not right. But now that is across the country on most of them. And then they used to be able to spray products. There was labeling and serving size and pregnancy warning. So we've done a lot of things that have become best practices across the country. So, any questions on that, Jake? There's a lot on here.
If you could dumb down, because over the last 11 years, I can see this on our YouTube. People can see it. Is you've done a lot of projects. What are maybe your top 3 projects that you're most proud of? Or maybe we'll go over that later too. But from here, so you got THC companies to label their packaging, which is so important. And you just pick out maybe one or two more that you're like, this is what we've done and this is what we've done too.
Well, and I think the universal symbol, and we decided that we did not want a marijuana leaf on it. We wanted the words THC because from the very beginning, we had very smart co-founders and they said it is about the THC. It's really, and the confusion of, as we've seen over the past 12 years, it's no longer the plant.
Yeah.
Few people that, are using organic, that creative plants. So I think the pregnancy sign was really huge because right after we got this done, there was the Surgeon General came out and said there's no safe amount of THC for the unborn or breastfeeding child. I think the symbol, and then, and I'll go over later in the Bill 1317 was probably huge. It was a groundbreaking bill that it was really the first pushback on the marijuana industry in any state going forward. But a lot of it, as you see, is common sense, like serving size, a cookie should not have this big. A cookie the size of a quarter should not have 10 servings in it. You shouldn't have to tell a person to cut that into 10 servings. So
yeah,
it's just a lot of, so serving size, I would say the pregnancy warning and then 1317, and the THC symbol. But we've done a lot. And again, a lot of it is just common sense.
Yeah.
So I want to let you guys know, like where to find data. Data is not sexy. I'm an English major. I data, but really data is how you get stuff done. So there's a list here of where to find some data. So we've worked with these agencies over the years to get data and to find out. Ironically, as we've been around longer than some of these agencies and we've outlasted a lot of regulators, so we often get called to say, hey, what's the history lesson of the genesis of a rule or regulation? So there, and I'll quickly run through these for the podcasters. The Department of Human Services, most states have a child fatality report. Local excise and license is really important. HIDA, which is a high-intensity drug trafficking area. There are multiple regions, and there's really good driving while intoxicated data in those reports. Industry, revenue, what does that look like? Colorado's pretty transparent. We've got dashboards and a lot of information in annual reports. Youth surveys. Most states do youth surveys, and you can find out, what kind of drug use. We've actually really pushed that hard. We've added multiple questions of marijuana because it used to be like, do you use marijuana? And that was it. So now we're like, well, when did you first start? What product did you start using? I mean, have you used in the last 30 days? Have you driven while you've been high? So get information and getting that and working with agencies to get the information that will help you get the data you want is really important.
Okay. Some of those that I wouldn't have thought of that are on here are like the Department of Transportation, the local event permitting office. I wouldn't have thought to go there either. And then I wouldn't have thought to go on the industry forecasts and reports as well. What does it mean when you say local excise and license?
So that's who runs our Denver local excise and license. And I have a map that I did later, but they're the ones that track in Colorado. And it's hard because it's not like it's tracked by, like ours goes through Department of Revenue, like marijuana is handled through that. But different states, there's different organizations that manage it. So it depends on what the state does. So that's really important to find out who manages that. And then we have the Marijuana Enforcement Division, which we actually have a great relationship with, which we're like, hey, this isn't working, or hey, I think this is not working. The permitting office was who we worked with for. We had a 420 of that, and I'll kind of quickly cover that in our case study.
Cool.
And then really we helped get policy change with some really strong academic and medical partnerships. So we work very closely with the Child and Adolescent Psychiatric Society, both from an educational standpoint. I often present with the doctor, which makes me so happy because, again, I'm like, yeah, he or she can cover that. So they really explain and lay out the mental health warnings and how it's affect what they're seeing in the emergency rooms. We work with a lot of emergency room doctors. neonatologists. Dr. Jeff Hansen is a neonatologist in Denver, and he helped us he testified on the increases he was seeing in THC in these brand new babies that were being born. So that helped get the pregnancy warning done. So, you need stories, you need data, and then you need experts. So these are some great opportunities. Pharmacologists, toxicologists. We actually have done capstone products with business schools about where marijuana is in the city, and so there's multiple opportunities. But really find your champions in the medical and academic arenas. Okay, so you got your data, you've talked to your experts. Now you got to create a story that really is going to affect change. So here you go. So what do? We've told some interesting stories, and a lot of this is on our website at One Chance to Grow Up. But so the industry in Colorado and across the country says, well, in legalized states, marijuana use is not really going up in kids. And that's somewhat true in some states. However, it's what they're using. So they're no longer just smoking a joint. They're dabbing ultra potent pot or vaping the high THC and taking edibles, which is serious because that's the stuff that's affecting the brain significantly.
Yeah. And Julie, I feel like right now we're about to get into some really, really good examples that people could learn from and then also duplicate what you're doing. So I want to set the scene right here. Is this the part where you're like, hey, if you're in prevention, if you're in schools, if you're advocating for students, for mental health, public health, whatever that would be, and you want to advocate, talk to your legislators, go to the Capitol or learn how to vote, is this where this stuff that you are going to be telling us will help them do it? And then what's the difference between, you had said, lobbying and advocacy?
So I speak a lot, Jake, to a lot of nonprofits or, people that are coalition partners that are funded. They have grant funding, and it says they cannot lobby. I get this question all the time. Educating is not lobbying. We only can lobby a small percent because of our restrictions as well. But we educate all day long. We talk to legislators. We talk to policymakers. We talk to senators. So it's really important to make sure that if you can't go in and say you must vote for HB 1329, but you can say you must protect kids, and this is why. And because your listeners are the experts, they know what is happening in the schools and with kids. So their testimony is imperative. We have so just so you know, lobbying is not educating, very different. And I mean, again, I'm not your lawyer, so I would make sure that you check with your grant writing, but we do it all day long. Education is vital.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
Yep. So ways we've told the stories, some of them are pretty straightforward, like a white paper. We have 3 white papers. Op-eds, either we write them or we find somebody that's been harmed in the community or a doctor or an expert. Media stories, that's been really great because some kids want to get in front of the media, and we help orchestrate a relationship with them and the media and say, tell your story. Visuals, super empowering. We have postcards to legislators, so a lot of different things. And a lot of these are available for free on our website, so feel free to use them. If anyone out there wants to co-brand with us, let us know. This was a super powerful narrative. So it's a picture on a tray of all these different candies and cookies. And we walked around the committee room in 2014 after the stores just opened in Colorado. And it was legal for you. They'd buy it from Costco and they would spray THC all over it. So we walked in, and it really was shocking for a lot of the legislators. They were like, oh my gosh. So that narrative helped us change or ban THC spray, and also helped us remove kid-friendly shapes and kid-friendly shapes, because you can't have animals, you can't have body parts, you can't have anything in the shape of a fruit as well. And a lot of other states have gone on to do that too. And on the right, as you see, so this is where Colorado started. We don't want states to start back where we started. We want to start now where we are. So Massachusetts legalized in the last couple of years, And as you see, they do have a THC warning that's not only on the package, but on the product as well. Super important.
Okay.
Kids, that's the other thing that I think, just like we wouldn't, I mean, I have 3 kids and that was a long time ago, but I would educate them on what a stop sign looks like. And then when they were taking driver's ed, like, make sure you know what all these signs look like. We need to educate our little kids what a THC symbol looks like in your state so they know not to, I mean, super simple. And, it's unfortunately, I mean, when my kids were younger, you'd ask people like, do you have guns in your house? Are they locked up? Like, these are questions you just need to, empower parents to ask before. Do you have marijuana in your house? If you do, is it locked up? Because accidental ingestions are up, almost 1,400%. So we need to protect our kids and educate them. The little kids get it.
Yeah. And I think what's cool about that, what you just showed us, is that you have, like, you brought these things into the room with your legislators. You weren't just telling them, hey, trust us, there's these gummies and these goldfish. They can be laced with vaping products or THC or whatever it would be. You're showing them and they get to be wowed because they're like, I would never know. They have the experience instead of you telling them. And that's just so important, like with you said, of sharing a story and bringing visuals. It's extra credibility and extra proof, and it probably helps you stand out from anything else that they hear that day. They're going to remember.
Right. Well, and because one year we took, there was no differentiation in the early days of 1 ounce of marijuana versus like bud plants, or 1 ounce of marijuana in dabs or the high THC. So we walked our little red wagon up to the Capitol steps with I think it was over 2,000 Girl Scout cookies, because that was the equivalent of what 1 ounce of dabs would do, and it could be in 2,000 cookies. So it was really interesting. So people, yeah, that was shocking. Even a very strong proponent of commercialization was like, holy crap.
Yes. So you literally walked 2,000 cookies into the room to show them?
And they were fine. But right, exactly. Letting them know that
that's amazing.
Big difference between, so like you said, a story is important. I mean, with data, with science, but having a visual of some sort is very powerful. This is another visual that we created that I think is personally very powerful. I'd love to see what every large legalized market of marijuana every large city looks like, because this is Denver. It's called the inverted L. So in Denver, the darker areas are the communities most at risk. So we ask the Denver Office of Children's Affairs for the list of the child well-being. So child well-being is, I think there's like 14 factors, but it's like child poverty, violent crime, kindergarten readiness, 9th grade absenteeism. So there's multiple things. And then we ask the Denver Excise and License to show us where all the dispensaries and the grow houses and the cultivations are. Well, as you can see, they're in the areas most at risk. So this tells the story. There's a huge difference between decriminalization, legalization, and commercialization. We don't want anyone in prison for marijuana use or, possession. But you don't want the kids of those same neighborhoods exposed to this outlet density. So it was a great story. I've shared this, even though it's a Denver map, I've shared this nationally, and it's very powerful. So
yeah. So for those of you who are listening, to create that, you would find out the areas and get a map of your area, what areas are at risk or most, and then where those marijuana dispensaries and places are.
Right.
Okay.
And I've just talked to somebody from the nicotine arena, and she said, I'm sure that if you overlay the same map with alcohol and nicotine, and then also grocery stores, the lack of grocery stores, you would find the same thing. So
wow.
If anyone has funding for that, I think you should go figure that out too, because right, we're creating just a nightmare for our kids most at risk, and for parents too.
Yeah.
Real quickly, we've created billboards, which feel like old school, but they've been really successful. We just did a campaign. I spoke at North High School, which is pretty diverse Latino high school in Denver, about a year ago. And they said, hey, we really would love a Spanish language billboard. And I was like, okay. So I brought that back to the team. We found some funding. We had 4 billboards in that corridor. We did a press conference, and it was very, very successful. So it was a back-to-school event, and then we co-launched it with a digital campaign, English and Spanish, and we hit over 1 million people. So, and a lot of these things, like if you Google, can you spot the pot? One chance is, or it was Smart Colorado at that time, billboard comes up. So that's right after legalization. So some of those products is just like what we took to the Capitol. It's the story. So some of those products were legal pot, and some of them were candy that we bought at the grocery store. So,
wow.
Going back to your point, like, how can you tell a narrative if you don't have 2,000 cookies to walk into the Capitol? Well, this story started out at a dining room table. So on the left is a first little cookie. It had 10 servings of THC, so 100 milligrams of THC was in that mini, basically Reese's peanut butter cup, because there was no pre-approved process for products and multi-serving edibles. And how did this? So we took these pictures, we took them to the Capitol. My colleague Rachel showed them to some regulators. They didn't believe her. They thought we were lying, which was hilarious. And then they're like, wait. So we showed the packaging, we showed the whole product. And then the head of marijuana enforcement called her at a soccer game Saturday morning when she was at her son's soccer game. And we need to do emergency rulemaking. So you got to get the right person, you got to get the champion, and you got to really have them understand what's going on.
Okay. Wow. So who did you go to that was able to make that decision? Like,
it was part of the marijuana enforcement division. Well, we showed a regulator, and then I think the regulator reached out to them, and then we reached out to, this needs to be fixed. There was also that boy that from the Congo that died around that same time. And then there was a father who ate a whole edible because there was no serving size on that. And he shot his wife in front of his 2 kids. So those horrible stories also, unfortunately, changed the narrative too.
Yeah.
So one chance to grow up, makes some people super uncomfortable, but we shop the market. We take pictures, so you don't have to. So the products in the green were what I purchased recently in Colorado, and the products on top were purchased in Oregon. So they're Cocoa Canna Krispies, and that had a hang tag. I used to be in retail, so it had a stapled hang tag. It's something that a 2-year-old could have ripped apart. There's fudge, there's Samoa Girl Scout cookie vapes. There was all kinds of products out there. The other ones down below, these make me a little angry because, if you prove something, if I say something, I have to prove it with some science. And they say you're going to be sexier, you're going to be happier, you're going to be smarter, love, bliss, genius. And they infer that this will help you in those arenas. And it's false advertising and it's false health claims. So, yeah. So I want to make sure your listeners know about THC Photos. It's a great resource. THCphotos.org, great resource. There's, I think, 12 states we have up there. We're getting some hemp pictures up there soon. People need to know. It's so confusing, even for you and I who have been in this space for a long time. I mean, is there a difference between adult use or medical or THC and CBD and now hemp and, milligrams and ounces, and it's all so much. So we've hopefully laid it out. It's a great place for parents to see what kind of stuff is on there. If you look above, there was a Blaze soda, which I think was shocking. I bought it, and my poor family, every time we go on vacation, they're like, "Mom, are you going to do another dispensary?" I'm like, "Yes, I am."
You're on a mission.
Yes, and then I don't travel with it. It stays where it was, but. The Blaze, that little soda, and it was probably, like a size of a Venti Coke or a Venti Starbucks drink.
Yeah.
10 servings in it, which is pretty crazy because no one sits and drinks a little bit of soda. 10 ounces or an ounce at a time. So.
Yeah. So THCphotos.org, you can see what the popular products are selling right now so that you're aware.
Yep, and you can download them for free. They're you can use them for media. We just had a nurse reach out in Boulder that said she wanted to use them. So yeah, they're used. Were used in Hawaii, New Zealand. I saw an LGBT group used them in New York City. So yeah, please feel free to use them any way you can. Just make sure you credit One Chance if you could.
That's great.
So I know you and I had talked briefly about this, but hemp is crazy. So hemp is legalized, and I'm not going to get into all the semantics because, again, English major, not a chemist. It's legal in all 50 states because of the 2018 Farm Bill. We are working with us, and many other organizations are working to try to close some of the loopholes in the Farm Bill. So products are no longer available. Some of these products are sold at gas stations, not in Colorado, but in Texas, Oklahoma, they're sold at gas stations. You can be 18. Some of them have no age verification. Some of them are 21. I did some shopping, and those are my comments on there. I mean, one person said I had to be 18. One person said, no, you can be 21. One said, oh, yeah, your daughter can come in. One of the cookies had 500 milligrams. Another vape had almost 3,000 milligrams of HHC. So chemists don't even know what some of this is. They're just creating new derivatives of Delta 8 and Delta 9, and they're still legal because of the way the Farm Bill is written. And there's no oversight. It's just, and all of this is intoxicating. The product on the bottom that looks like a cigarette, I peeled off the price, and I found out it was 2 years expired. And it came from Europe. Like, it was just like, so it was just, who knows?
They'll sell anything. It's like, wow.
It's crazy. And then there's Pop Rocks. Some of you remember that there's the THC Pop Rocks that kind of pop around in your mouth, and those were intoxicating. And here's my daughter on the left. She was 17 at the time. I'm sorry, on the right. I had purchased some items online, and she went to go to the mailbox, and that's what came in. And I was like, holy crap, that was such an eye-opening moment. So I thought it was a package from Amazon, and it was from the product I ordered. So again, no age verification. A 12-year-old could get this online and get a lot of people very high very quickly. We have some tools for your audience members and your team members. We have Marijuana Free Zone is an initiative. There's stickers. It's a really positive way to say I work with multiple schools and Boys and Girls Club on that. So because marijuana, we all know that schools are drug-free, Jake, but marijuana is kind of this weird spot because it's legal and it's, sold as medicine. So we just want to make sure that people know that this is a safe space. We have multiple newsletters, Community Voices, which I think I'm going to try to get Jake on one of ours. Woo-hoo!
Yeah.
Multiple Spanish language resources. So please sign up and take a look at everything we have, and it's yours for the taking. So really quickly, Jake, do we have time to go over the case?
Yeah, please.
So I want to quickly say how we've done things, and I want to encourage your listeners, like, this can be done. So 420, I'm sure all of you know what 420 is, but it's now in the Oxford Dictionary. Yay. It's the 20th day of the fourth month, or the time 420, when referenced as a day of cannabis consumption or the celebration of marijuana culture. So before legalization in Denver, 420 was a big deal, but it was a First Amendment. And now, I used to be in trade shows, Jake, and it's like a big trade show. I mean, there's swag, there's marketing, there's bands, it's super entertaining. So most cities have 420 to be a 21 plus event, 21 age plus. No, Denver didn't. So we're like, okay, so we've worked with the promoters over the years. They discouraged it, but they never made any
like policy or enforcement.
So we're like, okay, so we got a little irritated. So we thought, okay, we have DPS, Denver Public Schools, is the largest school district in the state here in Colorado. We're like, hey, we want to know, if 420 falls on a school day, what does your attendance numbers look like? Drop in 42%, especially more when it was on a Thursday or Friday. Yeah, so significant. So we have our data. Our story became kids skip school at 420, and also little kids were there, and we knew that because we attend 420 just to see what it looks like. So some shocking pictures. These kids are they're not 21 plus, so you can see they're probably middle school and high schoolers. There's a baby stroller there. There's multiple baby strollers. It's hard to see, and especially in this picture on the right, you can see there's a plume of smoke around these kids, you know? So we got the data. We had a press conference at 5280 High School, which is one of Colorado's only substance use recovery high schools. So we had a peer counselor and one of the students that were pissed off. Can I say that? They were mad. They were mad that this was happening, and they thought they were really preying on kids. So they spoke to the media, and in 3 weeks, I mean, this literally happened. Like, we just were like, we're tired of this. So as you can see, we made a huge impact in 3 weeks. We got a petition signed. We had 15,000 people reach out on social. We got 3 TV stations covering it. And the outcome, event organizers agreed to 21 plus in perpetuity. So we went this year, and there were age checks at every entrance point. So that's great. I mean, so super grassroots. It really was not just us. It was also just getting the information out to parents, and then putting up a stink, because the city was saying they were doing it, and the promoters were saying they were doing it. We're like, we don't care. Like, just let's fix this. So and we didn't blame DPS on this. We just used their data to help create the narrative.
Yeah.
This is a narrative that pretty much wrote itself. There was a study of dispensaries in Colorado that was conducted by CU School of Medicine. So they interviewed 400 cannabis dispensaries, and nearly 70% of them recommended cannabis products to treat nausea in the first semester. So again, as you heard, I like Starbucks. I'm here with my Starbucks. That's like me going to Starbucks this morning in the drive-through line and say, hey, Sarah, I think I have a slip disc. Like, what do you recommend? So these people are retail. They have nominal training and no medical training. So we were like, this is ridiculous. So we had the information from CU School of Medicine. So we decided the academia kind of needed to move on to the next question. So we took the baton and we're like, hey, we'll make this into policy change. So, and this had tried to been done a couple times. So I think 3 or 4 years before that. So we were super happy. So we could have had a gotcha approach and waited until the deadline for January 1st for all these signs to be in every dispensary. But we're like, that's not how we roll. We wanted to help protect kids. So we sent out 1,200 signs. They didn't look quite like this. They were not self-promoting. They didn't have our logo on it at all. But we mailed them with a letter explaining the law change to every dispensary. And about a third of the dispensaries were like, yeah, well, we want more. That's great. So, I mean, we helped promote that. And then always we want to find out what was the result. So the result was we moved the needle. So 8.2% of women in 2019 used marijuana, and then 6.8% in 2020. And that's from the pregnancy risk assessment monitoring system. So great. I mean, we moved the needle.
Yeah, that's so good. Oh, thank you for lunch. Oh, my wife brought me lunch. Thanks, Al.
It's so nice. Oh,
That's so nice.
what'd you get?
Oh, Chick-fil-A.
Oh, that's awesome.
This episode sponsored by no.
So the second issue that we did is, and this one's a little more complicated. So if any of your listeners have any questions on this, I'm more than happy to help. But this, you asked me what we were most proud of. This is one of the things that really changed things here in Colorado. So in Colorado, real fast, you need a little background. We have medical marijuana with no age restrictions. So a 2-year-old can get medical marijuana if with parental approval. But as soon as you hit 18, HIPAA kicks in, and an 18-year-old can get a medical marijuana card with no parental response. So we were talking to school resource officers that are police officers in the schools, and they were telling us they were confiscated marijuana from students was in medical packaging. So that was like, okay, so that was anecdotal, but we were hearing this. And then we knew that, but so how was that marijuana getting into the high schools? So we pulled data from the behavioral risk factor surveillance system. So that's part of our health department. So we looked at the marijuana licenses. So it really was between 250 to 350 of kids under the age of 17 every year. So a very small group had medical marijuana cards. And all of a sudden, you can see it goes up 70 times when these kids hit 18. So we know that they're not developing Parkinson's or glaucoma or cancer. I mean, we know that. And that we also know that the pain, so under 17 was autism, and then 18, 19, and 20, it was pain, which I have a personal problem with because pain is a symptom, not a disease.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, now we have our data. So what do we do? So we decided to put a bill together with a Democratic PAC, and then a couple other parents and policy and coalition partners. So we got 50 coalition partners, which was great. We got children's hospitals, huge. If you can get children's hospital between any kind of your advocacy or any kind of your work, huge. Same with United Way, Boys and Girls Club, Big Sister, Big Brother, really important. We met with almost all the Colorado legislators. I gave so many presentations, I was exhausted. So champions to testify. I was actually at the Capitol. I was one of the last ones to do it at midnight or 12:15. And forget my testimony. I was sitting next to a 17-year-old, and he told these senators, he said, I could be out here. I could leave here in 5 minutes and get pot from anywhere I want, very, very cheap. And I'll never forget that. And they listen, they listen to kids. So the data was pretty damning. So here we are. There's a great picture of me for you people that are on. It can't see it. This picture was in People magazine with Laura and John Stack, and then several of the champions that we've talked with, and it was signed unanimously in the House and overwhelmingly passed unanimously in the Senate and through the House, and it was passed into law.
Yeah.
No, it was a big deal. It really was. And like I said, it's really important because we have a very pro marijuana industry governor, but because of our coalition partners and the people standing there, he had to sign it. I mean, because when you have NAMI and Academy of Pediatricians signed up, it's your coalition partners. It takes some work, but if you have a great reputation and relationships, you'll get the work done. So this picture was in People magazine, and my yellow pants on the far left made it into People magazine.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, here we are. What results? Huge results. And I won't go into all the details, but we made it harder, and we made medical marijuana, be treated more like marijuana. So now you had to have 2 doctors to sign in different locations. It had to be an in-person diagnosis. There was a 6-month follow-up. There was real-time tracking. The educational resource, which I'll go over later, was great. So what happened? This number is actually almost up to 72. So decrease in number of patients, 18, 19, and 20 are 72% decrease. That's huge.
That's so huge.
That's huge. So now it's being done. Medical marijuana is being treated more like medicine here in Colorado. It should be in a dispenser or a pharmacy, but that's for next time.
Yeah. Wow.
And some of the things we reported, like we always said, the data. So in this, the unsexy part of this bill is some of the reports that we asked for. So we got mandated toxicology for unnatural deaths under 25, health department trackings, marijuana-related hospital intakes, and unfortunately we just got new data, but THC is the number 1 substance found in completed suicides here in Colorado in the 15 to 19-year-olds. So that's huge. So we need to find out why and where. We also, there's still bad actors in the space. There's still, here it says 3% are responsible for over 55% of the prescriptions. And the new data, I don't have it in here, but is similar to that. So, but that's data that will help hopefully orchestrate new change. Here's the state mandated warnings that was part of this bill that had to be given out to all people that buy concentrates. So here they are. They're serious mental health symptoms, cannabinoid hyperemesis, which is uncontrolled vomiting, cannabis use disorder, and psychosis and mental health. It's like those are significant warnings. And I think I posted these warnings. I follow a group on Facebook called they have CHS. And these people are like, I never would have started smoking pot if I had known that it could lead to this vomiting. So people, not just kids, but our consumers need to be educated too on what's out there.
Yeah.
Really fast. Why do we need to act now? You know why? Because our kids' lives are at stake. And this slide came to me recently is the first time somebody uses alcohol, it's 16 and a half years old. They don't become regular users till they're 19. The first time a kid uses cannabis, they become pretty regular users within little less than 2.5 months.
Wow.
So that's serious. So we have a shorter period of prevention for cannabis and marijuana. We really do. So that shows you how addictive some of these products are.
Yeah, and how important it is to educate early about it, because there's a lot of marketing going into making the education seem like, oh, this is healthy, it's natural, it's safe, it's medicine, all that stuff.
Yep. There was a huge study that just came out. We work with a doctor in Canada. He testified for us on a few things, Dr. Daniel Myron, and he just said he did a whole thing on anxiety and how it's, especially in young men, if you're hospitalized for using cannabis, you have a much higher likelihood to get hospitalized for anxiety disorders. So, yeah. Here's some resources. I won't go through them all, but for your listeners online, there's resources. We have sample messaging, we have petitions, targeted action, zip code, specific blasts, a lot of parent resources, some policy resources. We try to put up all the recent data. And yeah, this is kind of, if all of you fell asleep while I was speaking, this is like, this is our secret sauce that's kind of helped us we really thought it out. How did we get change done? And other organizations too, and transparency and data, educate, empower your champions and empower the citizens. And then policy change happens, but you have to enforce policy change. I mean, like I said, we tried to get we got the THC symbol one session, and then we had to fight a whole nother session to keep it in place. So, and encouragement, a lot of it is local voice. Success is an iceberg. You get stuff on top change, but then you can see down below. You need to be resilient. You need to have courage. I applaud anyone that shares their story or shares their data, because and I think the tide is in our favor because there's more and more data and science. This is, I feel like this is a story of one chance to grow up. We've been at this for 12 years. And we've heard it all. We've seen it all. We've been called all kinds of names. There is some death threats, not on my drop phone calls, lies, ignored requests. But reefer madness days are over, and the science and data are now prevailing. So the narrative is about protecting our kids, period. So find your champions. And like you, Jake, you're a champion for our kids. And let's all, protect them. So there you go.
All right, Julie. Well, first of all, thank you so much. I know our listeners they're involved in coalitions, they're involved in schools. Sometimes they're prevention specialists that are, contracted to help youth. And some of the things that we do, it's youth presentations, it's education, it's data, and advocacy is one of those really important things that can last. And it becomes part of our structure that makes things safer.
Right.
And I don't think you can put a price on it. So I would encourage anyone who's listening, just go to onechancetogrowup.org, check out all their resources. And if you have questions, Julie is so generous. She's so helpful. And Julie, you have worked with people in other states, right? Like if they want you to help and support their policies and advocacy, can they work with you and get your help?
Absolutely. My only caveat to that is you need to have your coalition needs to be local. We tried to do this in South Dakota, and it was a colossal. I mean, we thought it was going to work, but no one wanted to hear, because they're like, "Oh, you're in Colorado. We're going to do it much better than you." So and unfortunately, part of it is they didn't have the kids that have been harmed. So, but they also didn't have a coalition, and so if you have your local support and people that care, we are all in. And we'll be behind the scenes and help you with testimony and help orchestrate that and media. So yeah, we care deeply about this, and we want to. We're all in this together.
That's good.
And I'm Julie at onechancetogrowup.org. So please email me when things go well or when things go crappy. But just let me know how things are going.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, for everyone listening to the Party Talk podcast this week, keep up the amazing work that you're doing. It is changing lives. You are seeing results. And if you need help, reach out to Julie at onechancetogrowup.org, and check out their website, onechancetogrowup.org. And of course, I want you in this field as long as possible. And I know we can't do it alone. So, build that community around you, get those stakeholders. And if you need help, just reach out. We'll do so much more together than we could ever do alone. And we'll see you next Monday for another episode of the Party Talk podcast, where we empower leaders in youth drug prevention.